Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. When I started building my vintage baseball card collection a little over 4 years ago, my overarching goal was to get as many cards featuring Hall of Famers from 1948 Bowman all the way up to 1980. Well, that is a huge undertaking. And when I first started picking up vintage cards, I didn't have a focus. I was all over the place trying to figure out what card I wanted to buy because there were so many that I didn't have. So I needed to find a focus or a project to work on to just focus my attention on certain cards and try to pick them up. And what I started to do is to pick a certain year and try to get all the cards featuring Hall of Famers for that particular year. And I started making some progress. I think I may have started working on 1980, ran into some stumbling blocks there of trying to find the right card. Then I moved to 1979, made a little progress there, got stalled a little bit, started 78, and then I find myself going to 77 and 76 and then losing focus again. And that was probably around the time where I came up with my first 100 cards for $100,000 list. And that really allowed me to focus on those 100 cards and see how many of those I could pick up and add to my collection. And again, once I hit a sort of stumbling block because of the price tag for some of those cards, that's when I created my 100 cards for $10,000 list. And I'm sure once I complete that 100 card list, I'm going to create another 100 cards for, maybe $10,000 list and work off of that one. But I realized that every card that I would pick up from either of those 100 card lists also fills a slot in either a player run that I may be focusing on, so a little project there, or a card that goes toward one of the years that I'm trying to get all the cards featuring Hall of Famers. So really, it's a project within a project, and that's the title of this video. So every card I pick up would either go toward a player run or a card I need to complete a specific year, as well as checking a box off of one of the cards on one of the 100 card lists that I have. Well, there's another project that I've sort of been working on. I really haven't said much about it, and it's not one that I'm really super focused on, but it's one that over time, as I've been working on these other projects, I have slowly started to work on that project just by the nature of picking up those cards. About 4 years ago, I did a video called Cards I Regret Selling. And these were 18 cards that around the time of my divorce from my first marriage, I had some bills that I needed to take care of, and at the time I was pretty much back then still exclusively collecting Wade Boggs, but I had some of these vintage cards in my collection. They weren't graded, but I thought, hey, these are cards that don't really fit my current collecting goals, Wade Boggs cards. And so, hey, this may be an opportunity for me to sell those cards and rather than put the money back into my collection, have it go to a financial need that I had at the time. Well, very shortly after selling those cards, actually, I submitted those cards to PSA to get graded, and I sold them on eBay. Some I sold for a decent amount of money, some went dirt cheap. Now, we're talking about maybe 17, 18 years ago. So keep this in mind as I go through the cards. And I do have some cards to show off here in this video. And so almost immediately from selling those cards, shipping them out, I had, instead of buyer's remorse, I had seller's remorse. And while it sort of temporarily helped the financial situation, which I'm glad it did, I regretted selling those. And I've always had in the back of my mind that I would really love to reacquire those 18 cards in my collection. Well, fast forward 4 years later, through various projects, actually getting into more seriously vintage baseball cards, I have reacquired 10 of those 18 cards. So what I thought I would do is sort of give an update on this project that has been in the background. I don't really talk about much. Show you the 10 cards that I have reacquired of those 18 cards that I sold, and to let you know what the remaining 8 cards are. And some of them are actually part of one of my either one of my 100 card lists. Others aren't on the list at all, but hopefully someday I will get to reacquire those cards. So I'm going to turn the camera around, show off the 10 cards that I have reacquired, and talk about the 8 that I'm still missing. Okay, before I start showing off the cards, a couple things I want to bring up here. First, I will have a link to that cards I regret selling video in the description of this video here, in case you want to go back and take a look at that video. I go into a little more in-depth look in terms of what I sold the card for and what the card in that same grade is worth currently. Well, actually 4 years ago. It may be an interesting thing for you to take a look at, to see where card prices were 4 years ago. Obviously, probably most of those cards, since vintage cards have gone up in price over the last 4 years, you could probably take those current prices at the time and double them. So to give you an idea of what I sold some of those cards for and what they were worth at the time, and show that in the long term I didn't do very well, but at the time I sold them for enough money that it helped me out financially, so that was all well and good. The second thing I want to mention is that, and I'm going to talk about the grade of the card that I had. My goal in reacquiring these cards is not to get them in the same grade, but just to acquire an example of that card. Now, in some cases, I just, through no intention, I have reacquired those cards in the same grade, and maybe in one case or so, maybe even in a grade higher. But the number grade is not important to me in reacquiring these cards. I just hope to someday pick up those remaining 8 cards and have all those 18 cards back in my collection. So I'm going to go through these cards sort of in chronological order, the newer cards first, and then work my way back. So the first one that I reacquired was the 77 Topps Nolan Ryan. Now, I actually had a PSA 8 copy. I didn't write down, I'm not going to go into what I sold it for. Again, if you want to check that out, you can check the video out. But yeah, I actually had a PSA 8 copy of this 77 Topps Nolan Ryan, but very happy to add this really nice PSA 6 copy. All right, the next card is the 1974 Topps Thurman Munson. Now, I had this one in a 7 here. I actually had a PSA 8, but it was a qualifier. It was they found some stain on it. I can't remember whether it was the front or back. It may have been the back. So in actuality, a PSA 8 stain would be maybe a PSA 6 in terms of value, maybe a PSA 7, and I got a PSA 7 back. Again, not intentionally, this is what happened. All right, the next one that I reacquired, another 74 card, the 74 Pete Rose. And I had that one, gotta check my notes here. I also had that one in a PSA 7. So this is a case where I got the same card in the same grade back in my collection. All right, the next one is the Thurman Munson rookie card. Now this one I have in a great looking PSA 5. I also had it in a PSA 5. So again, same grade back in my collection. The next one was the Johnny Bench, and this was one where I picked up at this year's National, and another reason why I was so determined to add this card back in my collection. I remember having it in my collection, really liking the card, but again decided to sell it, and have always wanted the Johnny Bench rookie card back in my collection. So if, of any of these cards, maybe with the exception of one other that we'll get to toward the end here, I really focused on getting this card back. And the card I had at the time was a PSA 5. And this one here is in a PSA 6. So I upgraded this one. Again, not intentionally, but really happy to finally have the Johnny Bench rookie card back in my collection. The next one is the 65 Topps Joe Morgan rookie card. This one here is in a great looking PSA 5. Love the centering on this. Well, I had in my collection at the time, let me see if I can find it. I had it in a PSA 7. Yeah, I had a PSA 7 Joe Morgan rookie card. But hey, I'm happy to have the card back in my collection regardless of the grade, because I just love this copy. All right, next one is the 65 Topps Corey Yastrzemski. I have this one in a really nice PSA 6. Really like the overall centering of the card. Now, I had that one in a PSA 8 off center. So again, because of the mark on it, or the off centering of it, even though it's an 8 from a value standpoint, maybe a 6. So in terms of value, I may be equal to the card I had in my collection. Of course, now with my focus on centering, I probably would not have liked to have that PSA 8 off center in my collection. Very happy to have this one in my collection. All right, just a couple more here. The 1960 Topps Stan Musial. Now this one is in a BVG 7. Hopefully one day back in a PSA slab, but I had at the time a PSA 6. And honestly, I'd be, knowing how the crossover is between BVG and PSA, I would be happy if this came back a 6, even a 5. I mean, I just love the look of this card. So regardless of what the PSA grade may come back when I switch this over, I have it back in my collection. And so whether it matches the PSA 6 copy that I had in the past doesn't matter. All right, the last two here, and this next one here is probably the second one that, and probably the primary one that I wanted back in my collection. And I picked this up at the, I think it was the 2015 National, my first National. And it is the 74 Topps Ted Williams card number 250. This was the big one that I decided to sell. And at the time, I had a PSA 6. And I honestly, I don't know what this is going to convert to PSA. It could very well be, I mean, this is an old BVG label. I don't know. I haven't looked at it really close. Would not be surprised if it drops down to a 5. Doesn't matter. The number value doesn't matter. I have the 54 Topps Ted Williams card number 250 back in my collection. And the last card that I have reacquired is this gorgeous 52 Bowman Warren Spahn in a PSA 4. Oh, just love that card. I also had a PSA 4 example of that card. So this is a sort of an even swap from the one that I sold to the one that I reacquired. All right, I'm going to leave this Spawn card up here. And right up here, I'm going to be showing off the cards that are remaining that I have to add back to my collection. And I'll let you know the grade that I had the copy in that I sold. So the first one, and actually this is a card on my 100 cards for $10,000 list, and it's the 1974 Topps Nolan Ryan. I had it in a PSA 5. That's probably around the price range that I'll be looking to pick up, reacquire his 74 Topps card, PSA 4, PSA 5, whatever card I find that has nice eye appeal and is budget friendly. The next card is the 1968 Topps Mickey Mantle. Now, this is a card that I have on my 100 cards for $100,000 list. I had it in a PSA 7 and I sold it. Other than the 54 Ted Williams, that 68 Topps Mickey Mantle and a PSA 7 haunts me. Would love to have that card still in my collection to this day. I'm definitely not going to be looking for a PSA 7 copy now to add back to my collection. I'm probably going to be looking at a 3, maybe a 4, but probably a 3 or 4. I just can't imagine, going after a PSA 7 copy of that to add to my collection at this point. The next one, a fairly inexpensive card, one that I could probably pick up fairly easily. Again, I just haven't put a lot of direct effort into reacquiring these cards, but it's the 1968 Topps Bob Gibson All-Star card. Again, not a very expensive card out there, especially in a mid-grade. I had a PSA 6, so I definitely see myself at some point reacquiring that card in my collection. And the next one is the 1960 Topps Willie Mays. I had it in a PSA 6. Now, the 60 Mays is not on any of my current 100 card lists, but would probably be on the next, maybe because of the price, I'm not sure whether it would make the cut for my next 100 cards for $10,000 list, because 1960 Topps Willie Mays, even in a 4, is probably up there and would take out a decent chunk of that list, but we'll see. But someday I hope to be able to reacquire the 1960 Topps Willie Mays, and does not have to be in a PSA 6. The next one, bit of a, well, I don't want to use the term. Anyway, it's the 1960 Fleer Cy Young. I don't think it's a tremendously expensive card today in mid-grade, so I think it should be fairly easy for me to pick it up at some point. I had it in a PSA 6. The next one is a card that I have on my 100 cards for $10,000 list, so I fully expect to be able to add this card back into my collection, and it's the 1959 Topps Yogi Berra. I had it in a PSA 5, but from what I remember, it was way off center left to right, but it's still got a technical grade of a PSA 5. So I'm sort of happy that I still don't have that card in my that particular card in my collection, because I would be tempted to sell it and replace it with another copy. So now having to go out and buy one for not only the card being on my 100 cards for $10,000 list, but just wanting to reacquire the card, I'm sure I'll be picking up a much nicely centered or well-centered card moving forward here. The next one is, and actually it's a card that at some point I still thought I had in my collection ungraded, but no, it was one that I sold, and it was the 1959 Topps Mickey Mantle 42nd home run highlight card. I had it in a PSA 5. At this point, if it's not on any of my current lists, if and when I do pick it up, probably not going to be in a PSA 5, maybe a PSA 4 again, just because of the price point that it would, the lower grade would come at. And finally, the last one that I would need, again, not a very expensive card. I haven't looked up what they're currently going for, but in mid-grade, I can't imagine it's going to be that expensive. It's the 1956 Topps Enos Slaughter. And I had it in a really nice PSA 6 copy, or grade. Again, I don't need a PSA 6 of that. Probably a nice looking PSA 4 would be fine with me. So out of all the 8 cards remaining for me to reacquire, probably the 68 Mantle, the 60 Maze, and maybe the 59 Mantle 42nd home run are probably the most expensive cards on this list that I would need to pick up. So it's all reasonable. At some point, I know I'm going to be picking these up. So with all this said, would love to know what you think about the cards that I reacquired. What do you think about the cards that I still have yet to reacquire back into my collection? The 8 that are remaining, I know I'm going to get there. It's probably not a project that I'm going to be really focused on, because I really want to, especially the 100 cards for $10,000 list, I really would like to knock that one out. But again, in doing so, I'll pick up at least 2 more of the 8. So again, would love to know your thoughts about this little project that I'm working on, but not really working on, in the comments. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.